So now, do we want Hispanics coming into America or not? Okay, conclusion. Illegal immigration's very bad thing. Very bad people coming into the country, destroying our people, engaging in criminal activity, et cetera, sucking up all the welfare dollars. I don't think so. These are the people we don't want. They don't play by the rules. We don't want them here. But if you got legal immigration where the INS has done careful background checks, and we're playing by the rules, and people are coming in, and we're evangelizing them. They're attending Christian churches, and they're becoming evangelical Protestants. I'm A-okay with that kind of thing. So this is a little bit of a, it's a nuance. It's a nuanced position, isn't it? Ultimately, we want to be sure we're playing by the rules, and ultimately those rules have got to be the laws of God. And welcome, friends, to the Generations broadcast. Kevin Swanson, your host, with you. Adam McManus, our host on theworldview.com, also with me on this edition of the program. And we're going to go to Europe for this edition to talk about the immigration issue. Donald Trump crossed the big pond and actually was in Scotland just a few days ago, and he had some comments relating to immigration, referring to immigration in Europe as the horrible invasion that's killing the continent. And I just did a chat GPT on this and to decide, are there countries in which, immigration is pretty much swamping the nations and taking away any kind of European national identity or European tradition to the respective countries. And sure enough, there are European nations that have a huge share of non-European residents. Malta at 21%, Luxembourg at 17%, Ireland, Sweden, and Estonia at 15%. And the irony of this is that, I was aware of what was going on in Malta. Malta is extremely pro-homosexual to the point that when there was a homosexual who repented, a Christian charity worker by the time of Matthew Grick, he repented of his homosexuality and he testified to his being converted, and now he is facing prison time in Malta for his testimony. Yeah, for just testifying to the fact that he had left the homosexual lifestyle. That itself was enough to earn him at least charges.
So much for freedom of speech.
Disturbing the peace and doing whatever Paul was doing in Ephesus 2,000 years ago. It's very disturbing to the whole Malta thing. Well, the same thing for Luxembourg. Luxembourg is number 2. 17% of residents in Luxembourg are non-EU born. And so it's interesting, Luxembourg has had a homosexual PM for about 10 years. Ireland, at now 15% of residents born outside of the EU, Ireland is also had a homosexual PM for quite some time. So it's interesting that the top 3 nations that have, I suppose, done about the best they can possibly do to undermine their European heritage have actually, brought in a fair number of homosexuals, or they have adopted a homosexual post-Christian worldview that pretty much dominates their respective countries. So what my point is this. The post-Christian nations are going to lose any kind of a basic Christian foundation and any kind of an identity to maintain their respective civilizations, and will probably open the doors to other foreigners to come in and reestablish their nation on a different kind of a worldview. And I think that's the kind of thing that's happening in nations like Malta, Luxembourg, Ireland, Sweden certainly, as well as Germany, Spain, France, and Italy. It turns out also, if you can remember, England had a Hindu prime minister, and Scotland had an Islamic prime minister. This would have been last year. So it's the first time in at least, 1,000 years of Christian leadership in these respective nations. So you're certainly seeing other worldviews, other nations, other nationals, other perspectives coming in and displacing the post-Christian position of these European nations, Adam.
I love what Donald Trump said when he landed in Scotland Friday evening, July 25th. He said, on immigration, you'd better get your act together or you're not going to have Europe anymore. You got to get your act together. And last month, we had nobody entering our country, referring to America. Nobody. Shut it down. And we took a lot of bad people that got there with Biden out. He said, you're allowing it to happen to your countries. You've got to stop this horrible invasion that's happening to Europe. I think of England, and I think of so much of the rich Christian history that you've written about in your story of freedom. And yet it's all getting flushed down the toilet. Number one, we've got an atheist as prime minister.
Yeah.
But number two, the influence of Islam is growing by leaps and bounds because of what Donald Trump has described as the invasion. The ideas are being replicated at a faster pace because the Muslims are having babies at a quick pace themselves. I mean, the average European couple, you're lucky if they have one child. The average Muslim has upwards of 6 or 7.
Well, it's interesting, again, the leadership of these nations, I'm thinking Ireland, Scotland, England, Luxembourg, etc. It's either homosexuals and atheists on the one side or Hindus and Muslims on the other. So you have two choices there in both worldviews. The one is the post-Christian worldview. The other is an anti-Christian worldview or a different religious perspective that is effectively taking over these nations. It's my perspective that the post-Christian atheism and homosexualism that is dominating these nations is nothing but dry rot. And it's just simply opening the door for other worldviews to step in and dominate these nations in the years to come. So the answer is not so much to stop immigration as it is to rebuild the Christian foundations, repent, revive the Christian faith, and somehow ratchet up the church attendance ratio from 1 or 2% to 20, 25, 30, 35% in Scotland and England. Short of that,
evangelize.
Yeah, evangelize and disciple the nations, your own nation. And but short of that, you might as well just let the Khomeini from Iran come in and just go over and take over the parliament in London.
Well, when Donald Trump sat side by side with the English prime minister, he didn't hold back, and I admire him for that. He is a man of direct words. And as I was thinking about your opening remarks in which you quoted Donald Trump, I thought, this is a man who does not paint with watercolors. He paints with bold oil painting colors.
Oh, except for the fact I wish he would say, you guys need to fill your churches again.
There you go.
Mean, come on. If you're not going to have any kind of a Christian faith, then you've pretty much destroyed your nation. What destroys the nation, first and foremost, is not the immigrants. What's destroying the nation is the atheism, the apostasy, the walking away from the Christian churches. That's what's destroying England, Scotland, and Ireland, and Luxembourg,
Islam.
And everywhere else. Well, we're going to take a break, and when I come back, just some comments from Nigel Farage. I guess something of a conservative nationalist who has made some progress in the UK. Be back with more in just a moment on Generations. The world is filled with irresponsible men, heartless men, treacherous men, dishonorable men, passive men. God is looking you straight in the eye, man, and he's saying, I'm calling you. Brothers, God is discipling us even as we are discipling our children, loving our children, investing in them. Before you ask the purpose for your life, you need to ask yourself, who are you? I'm the servant of the Lord Jesus Christ. He's given me a reason. He's given me a mission for what I'm supposed to do here on planet Earth. Disciple the nations. Begin with your own family. God calls you to be strong. This is the quintessential definition of a manly character in the Bible. God calls us to be strong. God calls us to be consistent, resilient, to stay in the battle, no matter the obstacle, no matter the demonic opposition set against you. It means we're not intimidated by the enemy because God's not intimidated. Calling you to that. And we are back on Generations. Kevin Swanson with you. And it does appear that immigration is huge in Europe. We just checked it out. UK has seen a 5 million person increase on immigration in the last 10 years. That averages 500,000 per year. Roughly 7% of the population has been the immigrants that have come in over the last 10 years. The percentage of immigrants making up the UK, I don't know what the percentage is at this point, but the immigration seems to be something pretty substantial as we see the numbers pouring in from the Middle East and Africa.
According to this Fox News story, the United Kingdom saw a major surge in 2022 and 2023 when small boat crossings reached over 44,000 per year. Nearly 22,500 people have arrived in the United Kingdom so far this year after crossing the English Channel. That's 57% of an increase from this point last year. Hungary and Poland are two of the most prominent European countries, though, by contrast, to take a hardline stance against immigration. And of course, we've reported often on the worldview that Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban is a Trump ally, and Trump also often compliments him when he's talking about Europe.
Yeah, Hungary and several Eastern European nations are the least likely to have received immigrants. And here's the concern of people like Nigel Farage, who is the Brexit guy that led the Brexit out of the EU. This would have been in 2020. He says we live increasingly in a lawless Britain. This is what he said on Monday at a press conference. We're actually facing in many parts of the country nothing short of societal collapse. People are scared to go out to the shops, scared to let their kids out. That's a society that's degraded. It's happening very, very rapidly. Farage maintains the ECHR, which is the European Court of Human Rights, is undermining the country's ability to deport foreign criminals, terrorists, and legal migrants, something that the President of the United States has not had much trouble pulling off of recent.
But that's because he cited some older, some say antiquated laws on the books that have made the Democrats go berserk, that authorize him to deport some of these illegals because of this contention that the country from which they came is, in a sense, at war with America because of the drug cartels, the human trafficking, etc. So Donald Trump has really done his homework to use basically every legal tool in his toolbox to kind of get rid of the bad guys and do so quickly. Nigel Farage is suggesting that if the United Kingdom withdraws from the European Court of Human Rights, which sounds like a European Court of Human Rights would be a good body, but he's saying no, they're actually undermining our sovereignty. He's saying they're undermining the country's ability to deport foreign criminals, terrorists, and illegal migrants, that exiting the system would remove legal barriers imposed by foreign judges, allowing the United Kingdom to swiftly remove dangerous people, free up prison space, reduce taxpayer burdens, and send a strong message that crime by non-citizens will result in certain expulsion. Now, this is a current member of parliament, and he is the leader of the United Kingdom Independence Party. And so he is definitely a voice to be considered.
These are testing the commitment on the part of the average EUer or Brit as to whether they really want to maintain a civilization, whether they have the will to continue a nation or a society or a civilization. And I'm not sure that they do. The problem, of course, is that they've crossed the line of despair, which means they have no purpose for life. This is what happens in a post-Christian godless society where you have reduced yourself to a materialistic worldview where all we are matter in motion, no purpose, no meaning for life, evolved out of the cosmic slime. Honestly, I think the anti-Christian, post-Christian worldview that's so intensely anti-supernaturalistic, anti-transcendent God, that there can't be a transcendent God over all that determines an absolute ethic, an absolute purpose for life, et cetera, et cetera. They've jettisoned that. They have no reason to continue on. They have no reason to have children. What was it? At one point, the majority of the leading politicians or statesmen of Europe had no children. This would have been just about 4 or 5 years ago. I reported on this in my book, Epoch, the Rise and Fall of the West. I don't know where it is today. I haven't covered it today, but most recently, 4 or 5 years ago, the majority of the major leaders of Europe had no children. They were homosexual. They were single. They, had been married several times, but never have kids, et cetera, et cetera. So there's no real will on the part of these European leaders and these European nations to carry on their civilizations, in which case they'll open the doors to these others. It's interesting also that Donald Trump said recently, and I think this is part of what he said to the leaders in the UK. He said, the other nations send us their worst people. Yeah. You remember him saying that? I thought,
he said it
you know what? Sometimes that's kind of the way it works. Remember the old maid card game?
Yes.
Where you always wanted somebody to, you had that card sticking up and you're hoping somebody takes it. I think that's the way
take the old nations, maid, please.
Take the old maid, please. Take these cards. And I think that's kind of what Trump is saying here. But just for a moment, some of your thoughts on this, Adam, this immigration issue. I want to share some scripture in a moment, but some of your thoughts on immigration and the Trump policy in general.
Well, I just want to touch a little bit more on Farage. He suggested outsourcing hardened criminals to foreign jails and a hardline 3 strikes and you're out rule, meaning after 3 convictions, there would be no more rehabilitation for offenders. And he noted that one of the most egregious aspects of the collapse is that the government is obsessed with drilling into the British people that everything's just fine. Don't worry about a thing. We've got it all under control. And I thought, if this isn't a moment where, I think of the story, the emperor has no clothes, but no one dare says it except for the little boy who's standing on the side of the street as the emperor goes down on his float naked. No one dares say other than what is happening. But Nigel Farage is certainly doing that, and I'm proud of him for it. It's fantastic. I think it would make sense because they're dealing with some major crime in England. For example, 1 in 3 Londoners, Kevin, have been the victims of mobile phone theft. I mean, you're on your phone. The next thing you know, some pickpocketer or pick it out of your hand guy is pulling it right out of your hand and running down the street. 1 in 3.
1 in 3.
There's terrible. A sense of lawlessness that's very evident in that statistic, don't you think?
I think so. And at some point, yes. I mean, somebody's got to stand up and say, we're going to reestablish law and order in a country. But I mean, as I see it, one of the significant issues is this. Either you'll be governed by God or by God you'll be governed. We repeat that principle again and again on this broadcast because what we're saying is either the people will be self-governed, either there will be some morality about which the people govern themselves, or they will subject themselves to higher and higher levels of anarchy and tyranny in these respective societies. And that's the sort of thing we're seeing. We're seeing a breakdown of morality, a breakdown of the Christian faith, and the result is opening the floodgates to all these criminals, and it may result in more tyranny. But whatever the case, they're going to need to bring back a Christian world and life view if freedom and if prosperity and peace will somehow be preserved in these societies.
I do want to mention one more thing about America. Donald Trump has complimented Florida Republican Governor Ron DeSantis for his alligator Alcatraz. This is a small island off the coast of Florida in the Atlantic Ocean, as I understand it, that has been, in a matter of literally of weeks, Ron DeSantis has set up shop so that those who are being deported who are being captured by ICE but need to be held somewhere can be flown into Alligator Alcatraz. The only way out is if you want to, brave the waters filled with alligators. And then after they have gone through whatever processing the law requires, they will then be deported by plane to their country of origin. And of course, Donald Trump has very famously talked about reviving and updating Alcatraz itself off the coast of California in the Pacific Ocean, off of San Francisco's coast. And a lot of people think that's just a bunch of hoo-ha. But, Donald Trump is a businessman. He gets things done. And I think it's brilliant to have both of those on both coasts as a way to facilitate the deportation of illegal criminals who are a threat to the safety of American citizens.
Just for a moment, I want to capitalize on what the scriptures say about immigration, about the stranger, and bring some principles to bear on the civil magistrate itself in relation to immigration. The first of which is that, Exodus 23:9 says, "You shall not oppress the sojourner. You know the heart of a sojourner, for you were sojourners in the land of Egypt. You shall also love the stranger, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt." That's Deuteronomy 10:19. "When a stranger sojourns with you in your land, you shall not do him wrong. You shall treat the stranger who sojourns with you as the native among you, and you shall love him as yourself, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt. I am the Lord your God." Also, Deuteronomy 27:19, very important. "Cursed is anyone who withholds justice from the foreigner, the fatherless, or the widow, then all the people shall say amen." So these are passages that we find in Scripture. Now, the Israelites were not under the obligation to allow people to become citizens of their nation. Nevertheless, the sojourner was allowed to engage in trade, in quid pro quo trade in the nation of Israel. They were allowed to sojourn there. They could come and visit, like on a visa, this sort of thing. Now, we're not talking about illegal aliens. We're not talking about criminals that were somehow trying to mess up things, find their way into the country without the proper credentials, et cetera, et cetera. We're talking about people who were honest tradesmen who wanted to interact with the people of Israel. Now, a couple other comments I want to make. First of all, is that most of us are immigrants ourselves, so keep that in mind. Most of the Anglo-Saxons in England are immigrants from Germany, so the Anglos and the Saxons, they came from Germany. Most Americans are immigrants from Europe, et cetera, et cetera. Most Native Americans immigrated from Asia and probably the Middle East as early as 2400 BC. So keep that in mind as well. Most of the people in the world have immigrated from one place to the next throughout the history of the world. Now, number two, the state is responsible to defend its borders. The state is responsible before God to engage in defense and justice and to go after the evildoer. And there are a fair number of evildoers that are trying to make their way across the borders and to molest our nations. And that's a huge concern on the part of people like Nigel Farage, Donald Trump, and others. And it well should be. The INS has every God-given reason to defend the nation from the worst people. So, and I do think that worldview plays into this. For example, a guy comes into the country, meets an INS agent down at Denver International Airport as, he flies in from Saudi Arabia or somewhere, and he's got a Quran in one hand, and he's got "Kill the Infidel" tattooed in the other hand. Okay, now, that's an issue. I think, as an Immigration Naturalization Service worker, you should know something about his background. Does that make sense? You should sort of ask him an additional 25 questions. What's the deal with the Quran, and what's the deal with "Kill the Infidel" tattooed in the other hand? In other words, what we're saying is we're not going to let everybody into this country just because we're these amazing pluralists who just believe that every religion should be treated equally by the Immigration Naturalization Service. Does that make sense? If this guy is so committed to the Quran and so committed to the Muslim religion that he is, big time in favor of jihad, the way in which, I think a sensible government should handle that situation is, tell you what, we're going to give you a one-way ticket back to Riyadh. Okay. So here it is. Have a nice day. Okay.
Well,
and by the way, don't blow up the plane on the way back.
Right. We're a sovereign country. We have every right to determine what is our standard for how many given immigrants should be allowed in on an annual basis, and what should the vetting process be. I often have heard it compared to someone's house. It's one thing if you invite someone to come into your home and have dinner with you or spend several nights with you or a week, whether it's a friend or a relative. But when someone breaks into your house and sits down at your dining room table and starts eating your Pop-Tarts and asks for the TV remote, you've got a reason to object. And that's the difference between the illegal and the legal immigrant.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah, you got to play by the rules. Now, the other thing, another principle that ties into this is there are a fair number of immigrants on welfare. And this sort of surprised me. 42% of immigrants on welfare versus 25% for citizens. Also, illegal immigrant households, far more likely to be on welfare. I was really surprised by this.
Why?
Illegal immigrants.
I would expect that.
Illegal immigrant households, 48% of them are on welfare.
Yes, of course.
They're receiving government money. We're forced to supply these people's income and well-being, even though they are criminal people who have found their way into this country without playing by the rules. So 48% of illegal immigrant households are on welfare versus 25% for the citizenry, the rest of the citizens of the United States.
They're enjoying the American dream on our dime. That's what's happening.
They sure are. And they're criminals. They're criminals. 48% of these criminals are receiving some form of welfare from the United States government. Now, it turns out that certain nations are much more likely. Islamic nations and the Mexican people are far more likely to be hooked up on welfare programs. It's 60% for Mexicans and Central Americans, whereas only 17% for South Asians, Indians, and 30% for Chinese and Koreans. It's 60% for Muslims who are attempting to immigrate or coming in illegally from the Middle East and North Africa. 60% of them are on welfare programs. Sub-Saharan Africa, it's 40%. And for Europe and Canada, upwards of 25 to 30%. So now, here's the point. The point is we should eliminate all welfare anyway. But all welfare should be barred from any immigrant for at least one generation. Now, people say, wait a minute. America has a reputation of taking care of immigrants who have come in from the Ireland potato famine in 1845 or whatever it was. Yes, but it was always these privatized charitable organizations. I mean, that's what America did in the 19th century. We didn't need Marx. We didn't need the redistribution of wealth by a top-down federal government. This is the way in which you corrupt people. This is how you destroy your nation. This is how you destroy the immigrants that are coming into the nation. This is how you undermine their character. We should absolutely bar all welfare from any immigrant. If they're coming into this country, they have to work. Now, it's true that private organizations can help immigrants get on their feet. That's okay. They can do this. But it's not for the Marxists to step in and say, here, let's redistribute the wealth to the immigrants or to the illegal immigrants. It should be a matter of voluntary charity. That's how we would resolve some of these issues. In fact, I think we'd resolve 97% of the problems if we would just eliminate all welfare, especially for immigrants. What corrupts the nation is welfare. What corrupts the character of the immigrants is welfare. Do not bring immigrants into this country in order to hook them up to welfare programs and thus destroy their character further. That's just not nice. It's not nice to say, come into the country, we'll hook you up on welfare, and in the process, destroy the character of your people for multiple generations. That's not a nice thing to do. Please, I plead with you, don't do anything like that. This is what destroys the country. This is what's destroying the immigrants that are coming into the country one generation after the next. The concern, of course, is the crack house. If you heard that somebody was robbing a crack house, and you talked about people coming into a house and sitting down and grabbing the Pop-Tarts and turning on the TV and so forth, and okay, that's a problem. I see that to be a problem. But if somebody's robbing a crack house, Adam, would you be all that upset about it? Probably not so much. They're robbing the
No.
crack house down the street.
Right.
You're not as concerned about it. Now,
No.
here's the deal. I think we need to clean up our own backyard. We're a post-Christian nation. We kill 15 million babies a year by abortion, by the pill, by the IUD. We destroy the character of each successive generation by welfare programs. We need to get rid of all of this.
Well, I think about the average black family, if you can call it that. Sadly, the black fatherless rate is just growing exponentially. And it's because of much of what Lyndon Johnson implemented as part of the war on poverty, where he was promising more welfare benefits to young black women who have children out of wedlock. And if they actually got married, their benefits would drop, and therefore it discouraged them from getting married and encouraged them to have more children out of wedlock. And these children are all growing up without fathers, sadly.
Yeah.
And so, we've got our own problems here in America, and welfare has certainly added to that.
And we, welcome other folks into the country who perhaps had something of a social system in place. They had nuclear families still in place. You come into America, we'll destroy that for you. Thank you very much. Within 2-3 generations, we'll be sure that your family is destroyed as well. But England, America, these are post-Christian nations, and the foreign nations are flooding in to take advantage of whatever blessings are left from 1,000 years of Christian heritage. I get it. They're in here for the economy, for whatever's left of our, $180 trillion of debt and et cetera, et cetera. But they're hoping that, they'll shave off just a few more bennies before the whole thing collapses. So the West has destroyed its Christian foundations, the immigrants rushing in to consume whatever seed is left. Doubtful they'll plant seeds that will yield any fruitful civilization in the years to come. And yet, there's an irony here. Only 1% of English people go to Church of England churches on a weekly basis. 2% go to any church on a weekly basis. Okay, so you got 2% of English people going to churches on a weekly basis. But here's the deal. About 50% of churchgoers in London on any given Sunday are African or Afro-Caribbean, with another about 8% Asian. So wow, 58% of churchgoers in London are immigrants from Africa or Asia. 58%. So you're tiny little 2% of English people still going to church on a weekly basis. About half of that, little more than half of that, are immigrants. Take the immigrants out, you don't even have any of that. It's a lost cause. So you wonder if you should shut down immigration if there's nobody going to church. Maybe bring some immigrants in so we can fill our churches with immigrants. Maybe that's the solution. So again, there's tensions on these things. Fundamentally, the problem is England has utterly destroyed the faith. And they've just completely dynamited out the foundations, the Christian foundations that were underneath their civilization, and there's really not much hope left for the English civilization. In the U.S., okay, here's another data point. In the U.S., the evangelical Protestant Hispanic population has grown from 1.5 million in 1980 to 13 million in 2025. Okay, one more time. This is the Hispanic evangelical Protestant population. It's increased, not talking Catholics, many of them were Catholics, but now they're turning evangelical. So the Hispanic, and many of them are voting more Republican and somewhat conservative. The evangelical Protestant Hispanic population grown from 1.5 million in 1980 to 13 million 45 years later this year. Now that's huge. The percentage has risen from 10% of Hispanics calling themselves Protestant to now 25% of Hispanics call themselves Protestants. And because of the massive immigration, the numbers of Protestant evangelical Hispanics going to church on a Sunday morning is increased from 1.5 million to 13 million. Now, there are 44 million Protestants attending church on a weekly basis. Hispanics used to make up 3% of that in 1980. Now they make up 34% of the Protestant population attending churches in the year 2025. So now, do we want Hispanics coming into America or not? Okay, conclusion. Illegal immigration's a very bad thing. Very bad people coming into the country, destroying our people, engaging in criminal activity, et cetera, sucking up all the welfare dollars. I don't think so. These are the people we don't want. They don't play by the rules. We don't want them here. But if you got legal immigration where the INS has done careful background checks and we're playing by the rules, and people are coming in, and we're evangelizing them. They're attending Christian churches, and they're becoming evangelical Protestants. I'm A-OK with that kind of thing. So this is a little bit of a, it's a nuance. It's a nuanced position, isn't it? Ultimately, we want to be sure we're playing by the rules, and ultimately those rules have got to be the laws of God. And if we do it that way, Adam, things will go pretty well for this country. And for England.
Yes, they will.
And for England. Okay. Well, we got to wrap up this edition of the program. If you want more on the history of immigration and a right perspective on immigration, I'd encourage you to get a copy of our book, America in God's Providence, which gives you that full 1,000-page, 500-year survey of American history from a distinctively biblical perspective. It's called America in God's Providence, available at generations.org. This is Kevin Swanson and Adam McManus inviting you back again next time as we continue to lay down a vision for the next generation. This has been a production of the Generations Media Network. For more information, go to generations.org/media.